Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to give you guys some tips to help you get impact frags. For those of you who don't know what those are, an impact frag is basically when you kill someone in endgame and you get access to all their loot and mats, meaning you get a refresh on your mat count so that you can keep targeting and survive for longer. This video is going to contain some general tips, but we'll also have a setup that you guys can use not only in endgame but in 1v1s and normal fights as well. The content in this video is going to be more focused on trios rather than solos because trios is the main game mode and will usually produce more stacked games. However, a lot of the tips in this video can probably be transferred even if just a little to solo gameplay as well, so I would recommend you watch it through completely. The first tip I have for you to help you get frags in trio endgames is to always full tarp. You never want to do a cheap tarp, and I will get more into this as we go into the video. You're going to see why making a full tarp is always exponentially useful for helping you not only get frags but avoid getting killed as well. Now before I give you guys more tips on how to get the actual impact frags, I'm going to show you guys when you should be actually going for these frags and really being aggressive against other players. If you already know the timing and when to do this sort of stuff, skip to the timestamp on screen now. So in general, getting an impact frag is always a good thing. However, you don't want to go out of your way and be super aggressive, leave your tarp for extra loot if you don't actually need it. My general tip is if you as a combined trio have about 300 mats to spare, don't fully commit to an impact frag just yet, but start to get a little more aggressive because you are going to need more mats to keep going into the later zones. It is also important to be aware of where zone is pulling. For example, if you have 200 mats left as a trio and zone is pulling far, you might want to play a little more aggressive now and maybe find teams that are low on mats because you are going to need those extra mats to go the extra distance. However, if zone actually pulls back and you can actually recycle and reuse your old tarp, you maybe don't need to be as aggressive and just look for picks and look for people who are just monkeying low on mats near your tarp. The last thing I want to say is make sure that you are not below 50 mats when you are looking for an impact frag. Having a little bit of mats when you're actually starting to be aggressive can be really useful because it can help you win a fight. You don't want to completely just go ballistic and try and kill someone when you have 0 mats because that's going to make it really hard for you. If hype team is suddenly spraying you, if they just build a wall, close up the edit, and you actually can't break in, you can't take their walls because you have no mats to take the wall with, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So now that we know when to go for an impact frag, let's actually give you guys some tips on how to get them. So really quickly, I'm just going to show off the trick that I was alluding to at the beginning of this video. I've aptly named it the Bucke box. Now, this is not actually the name. I don't know if Bucke came up with this, but I just thought it was a really cool trick that I saw him using the most. So what the trick is actually really simple. You know when you open up the wall to box up an opponent like this using 2 cones and 3 walls to completely box them in and have all the edits? Well, Bucke, especially in endgame, will do this quite differently. Instead of opening up this wall and making it a almost 50-50 for them to be able to shoot him, he'll do a single window and box opponents in, or he'll simply do a right-hand window, which it gives you the right-hand peek, and then quickly double cone his opponent and try and wrap walls around them as well. This setup specifically is really good for 2 reasons. One, obviously you're controlling all the edits so your opponent is stuck. But 2, cones are not what people normally tarp with, so even if a team is full tarping next to you, you can still actually take their edits by placing 2 cones above them like this because most teams are tarping with only their floors like so. This top cone here stops your opponent from escaping out of the box, and this bottom cone here prevents them from placing their own ramp or cone, which they can then edit to protect themselves, and this will give you a completely free shot. And while this front wall, and for reference, they're heading in this direction, while this front wall can be useful to help box them in, this back wall is way more useful if you're targeting the IGL of their team, the player tarping in front, because this back wall will cut them off from their teammates and isolate them so that you and your trio can take advantage of a potential 3v1 situation. This segues perfectly into a tip on how to get impact frags on teams that are using the cheap stair tarp. When teams are using the cheap stair tarp, this setup becomes exponentially more useful because this cone will actually completely break their building piece. If you put yourselves in the shoes of the other team's IGL when they're tarping like this, they are almost always placing this wall first and then following up with a ramp. If they place this floor and maybe they even place this wall, but you're boxed up right here ready and you edit this window and put 2 cones like this, their ramp suddenly can't place to block off their back, and then when these walls come in, they're suddenly isolated in a box with your opponent. This is actually very important because I've seen even top players fall to this because they are cheap tarping and somebody simply places a cone in front of them. This can force them to not only go into a box where they are unprotected, or even get piece controlled really hard and box in for an impact, or to even get sprayed by other teams who see that they are suddenly in trouble. Now that we're finished with the box setup, let's quickly talk about players you want to look for to use as a refresh or an impact frag. Good candidates for these include teams that are behind you and close to your layer. For example, this might be a team that is above you and behind you in zone running from storm. This gives you more chances to be ahead of them so that you can pre-place your builds and edit them down or into boxes that are yours. Low ground is another good place to look. A lot of players there will not have a lot of mats, so they'll be forced to run around in the open. The next step for getting an impact frag is to be hyper aware of your piece control, meaning the walls and the roof and floors of your tarp. You'll often find players, especially if you're on the lower layers, for example, all the way on low ground or maybe just a block or two above, you're always going to find players monkeying and using your tarp or using part of your tarp to be able to rotate using less mats because they don't have many left. Being hyper aware of players you can potentially get a refresh off of is especially super important in trios if you're not the IGL. That's practically your job in endgame, is to get point elims, but also to get these impact frags because they are huge. When you're committing to making an impact play, for example, if you're making the box setup I showed earlier on the video and you're expecting to trap a player in it, it is also important that you calm and let your teammates know so that they can be there to support you as well. Once you actually get, let's say, a down body that you can then convert into mats, it is important to have a couple steps in mind. The most important thing is getting full piece control on either the down body or the loot. This can mean even tarping over to the loot or body in order to make sure that it is yours. It's also really important not to have a wall that is not yours or just an open edit in general, because this can mean that you get targeted because players are always looking for loot so that they can also get their own refreshes. Having piece control over a down body can also include carrying it back into your tarp. This is something that we see a lot of pro players do, but not as many less well-known players actually do in their gameplay. Another important note is that if the body is on a bad layer, for example, if it is all the way low ground and you don't want to go there because it is a very dangerous place to be, it is actually okay to drop down and get the box up on the body, get the loot, but then immediately you want to relocate yourself and get yourself onto a better layer. Alright, that's gonna be it for my tips on how to get impact frags in endgame. This video has actually kind of inspired me to make a video of just what to do in endgame in general. If you guys want to see that, be sure to let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, as always, please leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel for more Fortnite competitive tips and tricks. Please consider using code JEDI2X in the Fortnite item shop to support me, and peace.